follows, her hands in the air. She's bloody. A gunman points the way. Kenyan authorities say they closely watched the security cameras as the attack was happening. The hostage takers are spotted on the phone. Authorities believe they are receiving instructions from outside the mall. Here, one of them even appears to look for surveillance cameras. Only 4 attackers are seen in the video. There are long periods of time where they appear almost relaxed. At one point, the attackers take turns for prayers. Elsewhere in a mall restaurant, a Western man, gun in hand, and what appears to be a plainclothed Kenyan police officer take position to try to protect the staff and customers cowering behind a counter. And this was just the first day of what would become a 4-day nightmare for Kenya.
A UN worker kidnapped 8 months ago in Syria has been released. That according to Syrian state-run media. Canadian Carl Campo was abducted in the countryside near Damascus in February by what the Syrian government calls terrorists. Syrian media reports that he is now being handed over to the UN representative in Damascus. And amid the civil war, international inspectors continue to dismantle Syria's chemical weapons, stockpile, and to prepare them for that dangerous environment. They are undergoing rigorous training. CNN's Fred went to see just what that entails.
Explosion during a chemical weapons inspection. Chaos, fear. This is a training exercise. The lessons potentially life-saving for inspectors as they do their work in war-torn Syria. Franz Ontal is the head of inspector training.
We are performing our inspections in the middle of a conflict. We've never done this before. It's not something that you could have foreseen 2 years ago and planned for.
These inspectors from the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons are being trained to identify dangerous situations, to avoid getting kidnapped, but also to help if they witness violent events. This hostile environments training course is conducted by the German Army.
The German military makes this exercise as realistic as possible. The sounds, the pops that you hear, the hectic is exactly the same way it would be on the battlefield. And in this sort of an environment, the weapons inspectors from the OPCW have to keep their composure and administer first aid in a correct way.
The knowledge could be vital to these inspectors very soon. OPCW has been tasked with cataloging and monitoring the destruction of Bashar al-Assad's chemical weapons. After a major chemical attack in the Damascus suburbs, though the regime denies it was responsible. In August, snipers opened fire on a convoy of UN experts investigating suspected chemical weapons attacks. One vehicle was disabled in the attack. The inspectors were forced to turn back. The German Army's head of hostile environments training believes the biggest threats could emerge when the inspectors move in areas contested between regime forces and the opposition.
We have different players in Syria, and I think that is not easy for the trainees here and for the job in Syria.
After the inspectors dressed all the pretended wounds in the exercise, the head of inspector training says he was satisfied with their performance.
Given a situation, a crisis situation, and a chaotic situation, and people screaming in language that you don't understand, they were able to stop and assess the situation before they performed any action. And that I think was successfully done today.
But as realistic as this scenario was, it was just an exercise. The next stop for some of these chemical weapons experts could be Syria, one of the most dangerous places in the world. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Wildflecken, Germany.
We now take our second break. We'll be right back. And before we take leave of you, a quick reminder of the day's top stories. Church leaders are meeting in Banjul for a day's forum on food and nutrition security for West Africa as part of efforts aimed at helping reducing poverty. Politicians in the U.S. have agreed to pass a last-minute deal to end the partial shutdown of government and avoid a damaging debt default. Media sources in Syria are reporting that a Canadian UN worker, Cal Campo, has been released 8 months after he was kidnapped in the country. And authorities in Kenya have released the latest footage showing in real-time dramatic scenes of the attack in Nairobi's Westgate shopping mall. That was all in this edition of the news. Thanks for your time and stick with GRTS. Until then, I am Fatou Janembaye.
برجعت لحظة بعد غياب قلبي رفرف يميني والله زمان يا أحبابنا والله فتح نوار أن تدخلني ربي الجنة هذا أقصى ما أتمنى أن تدخلني ربي الجنة هذا أقصى ما أتمنى وتهب لي الدرجات العليا يا ذا المنة يا رب أنت لقلبي جنتان فالحب قد فاق الخيال أنت لقلبي جنتان فالحب قد فاق الخيال أرجو رضاك في الحياة من قبل أن تأتي الظلال أرجو رضاك في الحياة
أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد وانتشت روحي وصار الدمع يجري يا إلهي خذ بقلبي للرشاد أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبد رسوله. أيها المستمعين الكرام، نحييكم مرة أخرى، نحييكم من تلفزيون جمهورية الغامبيا على كل آمن وأنتم بخير. كل آمن وكل مسلم بخير أعاده الله علينا باليمن والبركة.